My name is Beatrice and I just turned 31 last month. I never expected to discover my entire family was gathering without me until I saw my cousin Emma posting Instagram photos of preparations for my brother Jackson's promotion party. A knot formed in my stomach as I scrolled through pictures showing everyone helping at my parents' house. Everyone except me. Despite the pain stabbing my heart, I found myself putting on my favorite red dress, driving across town, and walking straight through those familiar double doors, the look on my parents' faces when they saw me. Absolute shock. If you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, please subscribe to join me on this journey. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, I always felt like I was living in a house divided. Our family looked picture perfect from the outside. A successful father, a socially active mother, and 3 children who always had clean clothes and new backpacks for the first day of school. But behind our navy blue front door with the brass knocker that my father polished every Sunday, there was an invisible line drawn through our home. On one side stood my parents and my brothers, particularly Jackson. On the other side, just me. Jackson is 4 years older than me. And from my earliest memories, he was the golden child. When he got an A on his report card, my parents would take him out for ice cream. When I got straight, as they'd nod and say, "That's what we expect from you." It wasn't that they were cruel. They just had different standards, different expectations, and very different levels of attention for each of us. My father, Harold, built his career in financial management after serving in the military for 8 years. He saw Jackson as his legacy, the son who would follow in his footsteps and exceed his own success. They spent weekends watching football games together, fishing at Lake Michigan, or working on old cars in our garage. My younger brother Tyler was included too, though to a lesser extent as he was 7 years younger than Jackson. But I was never invited to these bonding experiences. When I'd ask to join, my father would awkwardly pat my head and say, "This is guy time, princess. Why don't you help your mother?" My mother, Diana, was the quintessential social butterfly. She volunteered for every committee at church, organized neighborhood block parties, and somehow always found time to attend Jackson's baseball games or academic competitions. She was proud to be known as Jackson's mom around town. Meanwhile, I learned to be independent early on. I remember being 8 years old and realizing I needed to set my own alarm clock if I wanted to get to school on time. By 10, I was making my own lunches. By 12, I was figuring out how to get myself to piano lessons across town using public transportation because nobody could drive me. The pattern of being overlooked became so normal that I stopped expecting anything different. When I had my piano recital after 3 years of lessons, I performed to an audience of strangers. My family had forgotten to attend, despite the reminder note I'd placed on the refrigerator door a week in advance. I sat alone at the reception afterward, watching other kids receive flowers and hugs from their proud families. On my 16th birthday, they forgot to pick me up from swim practice. I waited for 2 hours in the rain before walking the 3M home, only to find them celebrating Tyler's success at a science fair. My birthday wasn't mentioned until 3 days later when my mother suddenly remembered and hastily bought a grocery store cake. Despite all this, I excelled academically. I threw myself into my studies, joining debate club and student government, finding validation in achievements that didn't require my family's attention. I graduated as valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, and graduated with honors in business management and nonprofit administration. None of my family attended my college graduation. Jackson had a job interview that day, which my parents deemed more important. Tyler had a soccer tournament. I sat alone at the ceremony, watching other graduates wave to their cheering families. That night, as I looked at my empty apartment and the single, wilted congratulatory bouquet I'd bought myself, I made a decision that would change everything I needed to build my own life, separate from the family that had never really seen me. At 22, I moved across the city and drastically reduced contact with my family. I'd show up for major holidays, making brief appearances at Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners, exchanging pleasantries that never went deeper than discussing the weather or recent movies. I'd call my mother once a month, conversations that lasted exactly 15 minutes before she'd need to rush off to some committee meeting or to help Jackson with something. My father and I spoke even less. Over the past 9 years, I built a successful career in nonprofit development. I started as a grant writer for a small community organization, worked my way up through program coordination, and eventually became the development director at one of the largest community development nonprofits in the Midwest. My work fulfilled me in ways my family relationships never had. I found purpose in connecting resources to communities in need, building partnerships with corporations and foundations to fund programs that made real differences in people's lives. But despite my professional success and the new life I'd built, there remained a hollow space inside me, the shape of the family connection I'd never truly had. I'd see photos of my friends with their parents and siblings all gathered around holiday tables or celebrating important milestones together and feel that familiar ache of exclusion. I'd built walls to protect myself from further hurt. But behind those walls, a part of me still yearned for the belonging I'd never experienced. That yearning would occasionally lead me to check my family members' social media accounts, keeping up with their lives from a safe distance. That's exactly what I was doing. That fateful Friday afternoon when I saw Emma's posts about Jackson's promotion party, an event no one had bothered to mention to me. It was an ordinary Friday afternoon in May. Spring had finally arrived in Chicago after a brutally cold winter, and I was enjoying a rare moment of calm at the end of a hectic work week. I just submitted a major grant proposal that had consumed my life for the past 3 weeks. And with a fresh cup of coffee in hand, I allowed myself the small pleasure of mindless social media scrolling. That's when I saw it. Emma, my cousin from my mother's side, had posted a series of photos on Instagram. Emma and I had always gotten along well. She was 2 years younger than me and had often sought my advice during her college years. We weren't extremely close, but we maintained a friendly relationship despite my distance from the rest of the family. Her post showed elaborate decorations being set up in my parents' spacious backyard. Blue and silver balloons formed an arch over the patio. A professional-look banner hung across the back of the house reading, "Congratulations on your promotion." Jackson tables were being arranged with elegant tablecloths and expensive-looking flower arrangements adorned every surface. The caption read, "So excited for Uncle Harold and Aunt Diana's party tomorrow, celebrating Cousin Jackson's big promotion. The whole family's coming together for this special occasion number. Family celebration number. Proud cousin." In the photos, I could see my parents directing the setup, my younger brother Tyler arranging chairs, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins all helping with preparations. Everyone was smiling, looking genuinely happy to be part of this family moment. Everyone except me, because I hadn't even been told the Party existed. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth as I scrolled through more photos, each one a fresh confirmation that I was once again the forgotten member of the family, or worse, not forgotten, but deliberately excluded. The rational part of my brain tried to make excuses. Maybe the invitation got lost. Maybe they assumed I was too busy with work. Maybe they were planning to surprise me with an invitation at the last minute. But as I continued scrolling and saw comments from relatives confirming they were attending, including family members who lived out of state and would be flying in for the occasion, I couldn't maintain the self-deception. This wasn't an oversight. This was a deliberate exclusion. I set my phone down, hands trembling slightly. The familiar feelings washed over me. Hurt, rejection, anger. But underneath them was something new, a quiet, simmering indignation. I was 31 years old. Successful in my career, respected by my colleagues and peers. Why was I still allowing my family to make me feel like the unwanted child? My thoughts drifted to Jackson. Despite the preferential treatment he'd always received, we'd been close as children. I remembered following him around when I was 6 and he was 10. How he'd taught me to ride a bike and defended me from neighborhood bullies. But as we grew older and he internalized our parents' attitudes, the gap between us widened. By high school, he barely acknowledged me at home and certainly never invited me to hang out with his friends. During his college years, he'd call only when he needed help with an assignment or wanted to borrow money. After college, our interactions became limited to awkward conversations at holiday gatherings. I picked up my phone and called Amanda, my best friend, since college days. "They're throwing a huge party for Jackson's promotion," I said after briefly explaining the situation. "Everyone's invited. Everyone except me." "Those jerks," Amanda replied without hesitation. "I'm sorry, B. That's really messed up. I don't know what to do," I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it like I've ignored all their other slights over the years. But another part of me wants to show up anyway. Amanda finished my sentence. "Is that crazy?" I asked. "Not crazy. Brave," she said. "But are you ready for the fallout? You know they won't be happy to see you." I thought about it for a long moment. Maybe that's exactly why I need to go. I've spent my entire life trying not to rock the boat, accepting whatever scraps of attention they were willing to give me. Where has that gotten me? Still on the outside, still not even worth a text message about a family gathering. "If you decide to go, wear that red dress," Amanda advised, "the one that makes you look like $1,000,000 and call me immediately after. I want every detail." After hanging up, I spent hours pacing my apartment, arguing with myself about whether to go or stay home. I imagined walking into the party, seeing the shocked expressions on my family members' faces. The thought made me nauseated with anxiety, but the alternative, sitting alone in my apartment, knowing my entire extended family was gathered without me, seemed worse. By morning, I had made my decision. I would go to the party not to cause a scene or demand explanations, but to simply take up space in a family that had tried to erase me. I would be polite, dignified, and absolutely unforgettable. I spent the day preparing myself mentally and physically. I took a long run along Lake Michigan to burn off nervous energy, then treated myself to a blowout at my favorite salon. I did my makeup carefully, natural but flawless. And yes, I put on the red dress Amanda had suggested, a crimson sheet that fit perfectly and projected confidence. As I fastened a delicate gold necklace around my neck, a gift I'd bought myself after securing a major donor for my nonprofit, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the forgotten child or the family afterthought. She was accomplished, poised, and done with accepting less than she deserved. I took a deep breath, grabbed my car keys, and headed out. The 20-minute drive to my parents' suburban home gave me time for one last pep talk. Whatever happened tonight, I reminded myself I had built a good life on my own terms. Their approval or disapproval couldn't take that away from me. As I pulled into the neighborhood and saw the line of cars parked along the street leading to my parents' house, my resolve nearly faltered, but I straightened my shoulders, fixed a pleasant expression on my face, and walked toward the house I'd grown up in, but never quite belonged to. The sounds of cheerful conversation and clinking glasses grew louder as I approached the backyard gate. My parents had renovated their property into a suburban showplace over the years. Pristine landscaping, a large patio with an outdoor kitchen and a pergola covered in flowering vines. Tonight, everything was illuminated with strings of elegant white lights that created a warm celebratory atmosphere. I paused for just a moment, hand on the gate latch, gathering my courage. Then I pushed it open and stepped into the backyard. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Like a ripple moving through water, the awareness of my presence spread across the gathered crowd. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Heads turned. Expressions of surprise, confusion, and in some cases, alarm replaced the easy smiles that had been there moments before. My mother was the first to spot me. Diana Coleman had always been an attractive woman who took pride in her appearance. And at 59, she still maintained her highlighted blonde bob, perfectly styled her figure trim in an expensive navy blue cocktail dress. When she saw me, the champagne glass she'd been raising to her lips froze in midair. "Beatrice," she said, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. My father, standing nearby in conversation with my uncle, turned at the sound of my name. Harold Coleman, still imposing at 62. With his military posture and salt and pepper hair, stared at me with naked shock that quickly morphed into displeasure. And then there was Jackson, the guest of honor, looking successful and important in his tailored suit. At 35, he had our father's build and our mother's social confidence. The expression that crossed his face when he saw me was one of pure panic. I smiled and walked forward with more confidence than I felt. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady. "What a lovely party." My parents recovered quickly, moving toward me with fixed smiles that didn't reach their eyes. They intercepted me before I could get too far into the crowd. "Batra." My mother hissed under her breath. "What are you doing here?" "I came to celebrate Jackson's promotion," I replied innocently. My father's jaw tightened. "We didn't invite you for a reason," he said, his voice low but sharp. "This isn't a good time for one of your appearances." Before I could respond, Jackson joined our little group, positioning himself to block the view of our conversation from his guests. "What are you even doing here?" he demanded, echoing our mother, but with more obvious anger. "Don't let anyone know you're related to me." The words stung despite my preparation for exactly this kind of reaction. It was one thing to suspect you were unwanted. It was another to have it confirmed so bluntly. "I saw the party posts online," I explained calmly. "It looked like the whole family was invited, so I assumed my invitation got lost." "Nothing got Lost, my mother said, glancing nervously over her shoulder at the watching guests. We have important people here tonight, Jackson's boss and colleagues. This is about his career and IBA. Liability, I asked, keeping my voice level with effort. You wouldn't understand, my father interjected. Jackson has worked hard for this opportunity. Everything needs to be perfect tonight. And I'm not perfect enough for your gathering. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Jackson leaned in. Closer. Look, this isn't the time or place. Why don't you leave now before things get awkward? I'll call you tomorrow and explain. I knew that call would never come. Just like all the other promised calls over the years that never materialized. Actually, I think I'll stay for a while. I said. I'd love to congratulate you properly on your promotion. What was it? Again. Senior account manager. Jackson's face flushed. Executive project director. He corrected automatically, then looked annoyed at having engaged. My mother, ever conscious of appearances, plastered on a smile as she noticed people watching our interaction. We'll discuss this later, she said through clenched teeth. For now, just try not to draw attention to yourself. With that, my parents turned away immediately, transforming back into the perfect host and hostess as they approached a group of guests. Jackson gave me one last warning look before moving toward a cluster of people. I hoped, foolishly perhaps, that my appearance might prompt some kind of reconciliation, an acknowledgement of their wrongdoing in excluding me. Instead, I'd been treated exactly as I always had been, as an inconvenience, a complication to be managed. As I contemplated my next move, I felt a gentle touch on my arm. I turned to find my cousin Emma looking at me with a mixture of surprise and guilt. Beatrice, she said quietly. I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly, no one did. I replied with a small smile to soften my words. Emma glanced around nervously. I'm really sorry about my Instagram posts. I didn't realize. I mean, I thought you knew about the party and just couldn't come. It's not your fault, I assured her. I'm glad you posted. Otherwise, I might never have known my entire family was gathering without me. Emma winced. That's awful. I don't understand why they wouldn't invite you. Don't worry about it, I said. I'm used to being the family afterthought. Well, I'm glad you're here, she said, and I believed she meant it. Can I get you a drink? That would be great, I replied, grateful for this small kindness. As Emma went to fetch drinks, I observed the party from my position near the edge of the patio. Despite the initial disruption of my arrival, the celebration had resumed its rhythm. People clustered in conversational groups, laughing and drinking. My parents moved efficiently through the crowd, the perfect hosts, ensuring everyone had what they needed. Jackson was holding court near the center of the patio, surrounded by what appeared to be colleagues. I watched as he gestured animatedly, telling some story that had his audience captivated. His charm had always been effortless, a quality I'd admired and envied as a child. I noticed how different his demeanor was with these people compared to how he'd just spoken to me. With them, he was all warm smiles and engaging eye contact with me. Cold dismissal. It was as if we were entirely different people depending on who was watching. Emma returned with my drink. And we chatted for a few minutes before she was called away by another cousin. Once again alone, I decided to circulate, rather than remain a stationary target for stares and whispers. I would not be driven into a corner at this party. I would not make myself small to accommodate their discomfort. As I moved through the gathering, I noticed something interesting. While my immediate family had reacted with hostility to my presence, many of my extended family members seemed genuinely pleased to see me. My Aunt Patricia asked about my job. My cousin Michael introduced me to his new fiancée. Several relatives I hadn't seen in years engaged me in warm conversation. It occurred to me that perhaps the narrative my parents and Jackson had constructed about me, whatever it was, hadn't been fully embraced by everyone. Perhaps I wasn't as forgotten or dismissed as I'd thought. The realization was both comforting and painful. Comforting to find connections I didn't know existed, painful to realize what might have been if my immediate family had made different choices. I maintained my composure throughout these interactions, neither avoiding mention of my family's obvious surprise at my presence, nor dwelling on it. I was determined to conduct myself with dignity, regardless of how they had treated me. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset or creating a scene that would confirm whatever negative impression they'd formed of me. But as the evening progressed, I couldn't help but wonder, why had they gone to such lengths to exclude me? What was the real reason behind their obvious dismay at my appearance? There had to be more to the story than just general family dysfunction. And as I continued to observe the dynamics of the party, particularly Jackson's interactions with certain guests, I began to form a theory about what was really going on. I found myself gravitating toward a familiar face in the crowd. My Aunt Agatha, my mother's older sister. Unlike the rest of my mother's side of the family, who valued appearance and social standing above almost everything else, Aunt Agatha had always marched to the beat of her own drum. She'd never married, had built a successful career as a literature professor, and generally said exactly what she thought, regardless of who might be offended. When she spotted me, approaching, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Beatrice, what a wonderful surprise." She embraced me warmly, then held me at arm's length to look at me properly. "That red dress is spectacular on you. You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you, Aunt Agatha," I said, touched by her enthusiastic welcome. "It's good to see you, too." She linked her arm through mine and led me to a quieter corner of the yard. "I had no idea you were coming tonight. I would have picked you up on my way over." The comment confirmed what I already knew. My absence from the guest list had been deliberate, not an oversight. Actually, I wasn't invited, I admitted. I found out about the party through Emma's social media posts. Aunt Agatha's eyebrows rose, and she made a sound of disapproval. "That explains the expressions on your parents' faces when you arrived. I thought Harold might have a stroke right then and there." She shook her head. "I love my sister, but Diana. Do you have any idea why they wouldn't want me here?" I asked. "I mean, I know we've never been close, but to explicitly exclude me from a family gathering seems extreme, even for them." Aunt Agatha took a sip of her wine. "Considering I might have some insight," she said finally. "Your brother has been talking non-stop about impressing his new boss tonight, a Mr. Thompson, I believe. Apparently, this promotion is just the beginning of Jackson's grand ascent at the company. And Mr. Thompson is the key to making it all happen." "What does that have to do with me?" I asked, still confused. "Well, from what I've gathered, Jackson has been crafting quite the narrative for his workplace colleagues. He's presented himself as coming from the perfect prestigious family. Your father, the distinguished military veteran turned successful financial advisor. Your mother, the Society maven who sits on half the charitable boards in Chicago. She paused. The narrative doesn't seem to include a sister who works in nonprofit development. I felt a cold realization washing over me. Are you saying I was excluded because my career isn't impressive enough? Aunt Agatha's expression was sympathetic but frank. I think it might be more that your career doesn't fit the image Jackson is trying to project. The corporate world he's in values a certain kind of success, the kind that comes with high salaries and impressive titles, not the kind that comes from helping communities and working for social change. The pieces were starting to fit together, so I'd be an inconvenient addition to the family portrait he's painting for his boss. I suspect so. She nodded. And your parents? Well, they've always prioritized Jackson's wants over everyone else's needs. As if to confirm this theory, I overheard a conversation from a nearby group where Jackson stood with two men who appeared to be around his age, likely colleagues from his firm. Lucky thing your activist sister didn't show up to ruin the vibe, one of them said in a low voice. That nonetheless carried to where we stood. Remember how she lectured everyone at the Christmas party about ethical investment? Jackson laughed uncomfortably. Yeah. Let's not go there. Tonight is about celebrating, not getting political lectures. I hadn't attended any Christmas party with Jackson's colleagues. He must have told stories about me, exaggerated or entirely fabricated, to explain why his sister never appeared at family gatherings he described to them. What exactly does your brother do at his company? Aunt Agatha asked, having also overheard the exchange. He's in investment banking, I replied. I believe his firm specializes in corporate acquisitions and mergers. Ah, she nodded knowingly. And you work in community development focusing on underserved neighborhoods and sustainability initiatives, correct? Yes, I confirmed. We've recently been partnering with corporations to create more socially responsible investment strategies in urban communities. I can see where there might be some ideological friction, Aunt Agatha observed diplomatically. As our conversation continued, I scanned the party, trying to identify which of the guests might be the mysterious Mr. Thompson. My attention was drawn to a distinguished-looking man in his early 50s, who seemed to be receiving particular deference from everyone around him. He was tall with silver-streaked dark hair, dressed in an expertly tailored suit that suggested success without flashiness. I watched as Jackson approached this man, body language shifting subtly to project even more confidence and charm than usual. The man, Mr. Thompson, I presumed, responded warmly, clapping Jackson on the shoulder in a gesture of approval. That must be him, I murmured to Aunt Agatha. The infamous Mr. Thompson, she agreed. I met him briefly earlier. Seems intelligent and less pretentious than most of the corporate types here tonight. As I continued to observe Jackson's interactions with his boss, I picked up additional fragments of information. Apparently, the company was launching a major new initiative, and there was an important leadership position still to be filled. From Jackson's not-so-subtle hints and the congratulatory comments from colleagues, it became clear he believed he was the front-runner for this role. Jackson seems to think he's in line for another promotion, I commented to Aunt Agatha. Yes, he's been none too quiet about it. She replied something about a project director position for some new community investment initiative. Apparently, it would mean a significant step up in both salary and status. The phrase community investment initiative caught my attention. It sounded remarkably similar to the kind of work my own organization specialized in. I wondered if Jackson's company was venturing into territory that overlapped with my expertise. Territory he'd likely have limited genuine knowledge of despite whatever impression he was trying to give his boss. As the evening progressed, I gained a clearer understanding of why my presence was so unwelcome. It wasn't just that I didn't fit the perfect family image Jackson wanted to project. It was that my actual career and expertise might undermine the qualifications he was claiming to possess for this new role he coveted. If his boss discovered that Jackson had a sister who was already an established expert in community development, the very field they were expanding into, it might raise questions about why Jackson hadn't mentioned me, or worse, why he hadn't sought my input or collaboration. The irony was painful. After years of being overlooked and undervalued by my family, I was now being deliberately erased because acknowledging my existence and accomplishments might threaten Jackson's carefully constructed professional narrative. The realization settled in my chest like a weight. I had come to the party seeking some form of acknowledgement, perhaps even reconciliation. Instead, I had discovered an even deeper layer of rejection. I wasn't just unwanted as a daughter and sister. My very success in my chosen field had become threatening to the family that had never supported it. As I processed this bitter understanding, I noticed a stir near the entrance to the backyard. A new guest had arrived, and based on the reaction of the crowd, particularly Jackson and my parents, this was someone of significance. I watched as they rushed to greet the latecomer, their faces alike with eager welcome. The man who stepped into the backyard was none other than Mr. Thompson, the boss I'd been observing from a distance. He must have stepped away briefly and was now returning, but something about his confident stride and the way he surveyed the gathering suggested he was looking for someone in particular. I couldn't have anticipated what happened next. Mr. Thompson had just rejoined the party, and I watched with mild interest as Jackson and my parents fawned over him, clearly intent on ensuring he felt appropriately honored by his presence at their gathering. My attention began to drift back to my conversation with Aunt Agatha when something unexpected happened. Mr. Thompson's gaze swept across the party and then stopped fixed directly on me. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. Why would this stranger be looking at me with such focused attention? Then his face broke into a smile of recognition and he began making his way through the crowd in my direction. "Excuse me, Aunt Agatha," I murmured, confused by this development. Mr. Thompson approached with an extended hand and an expression of genuine pleasure. "Miss Coleman Beatrice. Coleman, isn't it? I thought that was you. What an unexpected delight to see you here tonight." My mind raced trying to place him. How did Jackson's boss know me? Then with a sudden rush of clarity, I remembered Robert Thompson. Of course, he had been on the board of directors for the Horizon Community Development Initiative, a major project I'd helped secure funding for last year. We'd met several times during planning meetings, but I hadn't connected the corporate executive from those meetings with Jackson's boss. "Mr. Thompson," I said, taking his offered hand. "It's good to see you again. I didn't realize you were with Pinnacle Investments." "Going on 5 years now," he confirmed. "But I'm surprised to see you here. What brings you to Jackson Coleman's promotion party?" From the corner of my eye, I could see my brother and parents frozen in horror as they watched this exchange unfold. Jackson looked like he might actually be sick. "Actually," I said, making a split-second decision. "Jackson is my brother." Mr. Thompson's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Your brother? Well, that's remarkable. He never mentioned having a sister who was so accomplished in the community development sector. I offered a neutral smile. Families are complicated. Sometimes. Indeed, they are, he agreed, though he looked slightly puzzled. Then his expression brightened again. Well, this is actually perfect timing. I've been meaning to reach out to you about the success of the Horizon Initiative. The results have been extraordinary. The $5 million investment your organization helped secure has already shown remarkable community impact metrics. $5 million. A significant sum that represented months of my hard work. Developing the proposal, coordinating with community stakeholders, presenting to potential funders, and ultimately securing the investment that had transformed an underserved neighborhood on Chicago's West Side. I'm glad to hear. The project is meeting expectations, I replied, professionally aware that every word of our conversation was likely being overheard by nearby guests, particularly my family, exceeding them. Actually, Mr. Thompson said enthusiastically. He turned slightly and gestured toward the gathered guests. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll forgive the interruption, but I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone special in our midst tonight. The party quieted as attention shifted to Mr. Thompson and by extension to me. Many of you know that Pinnacle Investments has been expanding our community impact portfolio over the past 2 years. He continued, what you might not know is that one of our most successful ventures to date has been our partnership with the Horizon Initiative, a groundbreaking approach to community-led economic development. I could see Jackson shift uncomfortably from where he stood. My parents had gone completely still, plastered smiles fixed on their faces. The architect behind that initiative's funding strategy, Mr. Thompson went on, the person who brought together an unlikely coalition of corporate investors, foundation grants, and government funding to make it possible, is standing right here. He gestured toward me. Beatrice Coleman is one of the most innovative voices in community development financing today, and her model is one we're hoping to replicate across our portfolio. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I caught fragments of surprised comments. Jackson's sister never mentioned her. $5 million. Mr. Thompson turned back to me, seemingly oblivious to the tension he had created. In fact, Beatrice, I've been meaning to discuss our new community investment division with you. We're looking for someone with your expertise to take the helm of a major new initiative. When I saw your name come up in our research as a potential consultant, I had no idea you were connected to our rising star, Jackson. The irony was almost too perfect. The very position Jackson had been angling for, the one that had been part of the reason for excluding me from the party, was apparently one that Mr. Thompson had been considering me for. I was acutely aware of every eye on me, particularly the shocked stares of my immediate family. This was the moment of decision. I could use this opportunity to expose Jackson's deception, to publicly humiliate him and my parents as they had humiliated me countless times before. Or I could take the higher road, protecting their dignity, even though they had never protected mine. Jackson and I have somewhat different professional spheres, I said diplomatically. But I'd certainly be interested in hearing more about your new initiative, Mr. Thompson. Excellent, he replied, clearly pleased. And please call me Robert. After all, we're practically family now that I know you're Jackson's sister. The look of pure panic that crossed Jackson's face at that statement would have been comical in any other circumstance. Robert Thompson continued, addressing the crowd again. In fact, I have to say the Coleman family is quite impressive. Jackson has been one of our top performers in traditional investment banking, and now I discover his sister is revolutionizing community development finance. Your parents must be incredibly proud to have raised such accomplished Children. All eyes turned to my parents, who looked like deer caught in headlights. My mother recovered first, her social training kicking in automatically. Yes, she said, her voice only slightly strained. We're very fortunate. Very fortunate indeed, my father echoed woodenly. Mr. Thompson beamed, completely missing the undercurrents. Well, I won't monopolize the guest of honor's sister any longer. Beatrice, I'll have my assistant contact you next week to set up a proper meeting about the new initiative. I look forward to it, I replied sincerely. As Mr. Thompson moved away to mingle with other guests, the party atmosphere gradually resumed, though now with a distinctly different energy. People glanced between me and Jackson with new interest. I could hear my name being mentioned in hushed conversations around the yard. Jackson stood rooted to his spot. His expression, a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't fully decipher. Shock, certainly, anger, undoubtedly. But there was something else there too. Perhaps a flicker of the shame he should have felt for his treatment of me over the years. My parents had disappeared into the house, no doubt, to collect themselves away from prying eyes. I wondered what version of this story they would tell themselves later, how they would justify their actions in excluding their own daughter from a family gathering. Aunt Agatha returned to my side, a glass of champagne in each hand. She offered one to me with a mischievous smile. Well, she said quietly, that was quite possibly the most satisfying thing I've witnessed in 20 years of Coleman family gatherings. I accepted the champagne, feeling strangely calm despite the dramatic turn of events. I didn't plan for that to happen, I told her honestly. Of course. You didn't, she agreed. That's what makes it perfect. If you'd orchestrated it, it would be merely revenge. But this is justice. The universe has a way of balancing accounts eventually. As I sipped my champagne, I realized she was right. I hadn't come here seeking vindication or hoping to upstage Jackson. I'd simply wanted acknowledgement, a place at the family table that had been denied to me for so long. Instead, I'd received something far more valuable, recognition of my worth, from someone with no familial obligation to see it delivered in front of the very people who had spent a lifetime overlooking it. The question now was, what would I do with this unexpected turn of events? The job opportunity Mr. Thompson had mentioned was genuinely intriguing, but taking it would mean working in proximity to Jackson, something that would require careful consideration given our complicated history. And there was the matter of my family's reaction once the shock wore off. How would they respond to this public revelation of their deliberate exclusion of me? As these questions circled in my mind, I noticed Robert Thompson engaged in conversation with a small group across the yard. The animated way he spoke, gesturing occasionally in my direction, suggested I was at least partially the topic of discussion. Whatever narrative Jackson had been cultivating about our family had been irrevocably disrupted. A new chapter was beginning, whether any of us was prepared for it or not. The remainder of the evening unfolded in a strange state of suspended animation. After Mr. Thompson's very public recognition of my professional achievements, the dynamics of the party had fundamentally shifted. People who had barely acknowledged my presence earlier now sought me out for conversation. Relatives who had accepted my absence from family functions without question suddenly wanted to know about my work and my life. Throughout it all, Jackson, my mother, and my father maintained their distance. I would occasionally catch them watching me from across the yard, huddled together in tense conversation, clearly strategizing about damage control. The perfect family narrative they had constructed was crumbling, and they seemed at a loss about how to proceed. As the party began to wind down, Mr. Thompson approached me again, this time without the audience of the entire gathering. Beatrice, I meant what I said about wanting to discuss our new community investment initiative with you. He said, we're looking to expand our portfolio significantly in the next fiscal year. And your expertise would be invaluable. I appreciate your interest, I replied. I'd be happy to hear more details. Excellent, he smiled warmly. The position would be Director of Community Investment Strategies, overseeing a $100 million portfolio focused on urban renewal and economic development in underserved communities. Based on your work with Horizon and your other successful projects, you'd be perfect for it. The role he described was impressive, a significant step up in terms of resources and influence compared to my current position. It would allow me to implement the community development models I'd been refining for years, but at a scale that could create lasting change across multiple cities. That sounds like a remarkable opportunity, I acknowledged. Is this the new position that's opening up at Pinnacle? Mr. Thompson nodded. Yes, it's a newly created role reporting directly to the executive committee. We're looking to have someone in place by the end of the quarter. I carefully considered my next words. I think my brother might have been interested in that position as well. Mr. Thompson's expression shifted subtly. Ah, yes. Jackson has expressed interest. He's excellent at what he does. Traditional investment banking, client relationships, deal structuring, but this role requires specialized experience in community development and impact investment. Precisely your area of expertise. I see. I said neutrally. To be frank, Mr. Thompson continued, lowering his voice slightly. I was surprised to discover you're Jackson's sister. He's never mentioned having a family member with your qualifications, especially given how relevant they are to our new strategic direction. I offered a diplomatic response. As I said earlier, families can be complicated. Indeed, he agreed, though I could tell he was puzzled by the obvious arrangement. Well, my assistant will contact you next week to arrange a formal interview. I should circulate a bit more before leaving, but I'm very glad we reconnected tonight. After Mr. Thompson moved on, I decided it was time for me to make my exit. I had accomplished more than I could have imagined simply by showing up and staying longer, risked and uncomfortable confrontation with my family that I wasn't prepared to handle in this public setting. I quietly said my goodbyes to Aunt Agatha and a few other relatives, then slipped out through the side gate, avoiding the main patio where my parents and Jackson were still engaged in what appeared to be intense discussion. The drive home was surreal. Just hours earlier, I had headed to this party feeling like an unwelcome intruder, steeling myself for rejection and disappointment. Now I was leaving with a potential career opportunity that could transform my professional trajectory and the satisfaction of having my accomplishments recognized in front of the very people who had tried to diminish them. But beneath the vindication lay a more complex emotional landscape. There was still the raw hurt of knowing my family had deliberately excluded me from a significant gathering. There was the uncomfortable realization that Jackson's career aspirations might now be affected by my unexpected appearance. And there was the question of what all this meant for our already strained family relationships moving forward. When I arrived home, I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine, then called Amanda as promised. So, how did Operation Crash the party go? She asked eagerly. Better than I could have possibly imagined, I replied and proceeded to tell her everything that had happened. Holy was her eloquent response when I finished. So, you show up uninvited, discover your brother has been essentially erasing your existence to further his career. And then his boss offers you the very job your brother was angling for. That's like cosmic justice. It does have a certain poetic quality to it, I admitted. Are you going to take the job? Amanda asked. I don't know yet. I said. Honestly. It's a fantastic opportunity, but working at the same company as Jackson would be complicated. To say the least. Complicated is one word for it. Awkward as hell is another. As we continued talking, my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. It was from Emma. Everyone's talking about what happened tonight. Uncle Harold and Aunt Diana left right after you did. Jackson is still here, but looks shell-shocked. Are you okay? Call me tomorrow. I showed the message to Amanda via video chat. The Coleman family drama has officially begun, she commented. I bet your phone will be blowing up by morning. Amanda's prediction proved accurate. I had barely finished my morning coffee the next day when my phone rang. Emma calling for the debrief she'd requested. I had no idea your work was so important, she said after I'd given her a sanitized version of the previous night's events. $5 million. That's amazing, Beatrice. Thanks, I replied. It was a team effort, but yes, I'm proud of that project. And nobody in the family knew, she asked, clearly struggling to understand how such a significant achievement could have gone unacknowledged. I stopped sharing much about my life with the immediate family years ago, I explained. It never seemed to interest them. Emma was quiet for a moment. After you left last night, it was so weird. Aunt Diana looked like she might faint. Uncle Harold kept saying something about damage control. And Jackson, I've never seen him so angry. He broke a glass. Actually, I wasn't particularly surprised by this reaction. My family wasn't upset about mistreating me. They were upset about being exposed for it. What happens now? Emma asked. With Mr. Thompson offering you that job and everything. I honestly don't know, I told her. I'm meeting with him formally next week to discuss it. After finishing my call with Emma, I spent the day trying to process everything that had happened. I went for a long run, cleaned my apartment, and caught up on work emails. Normal Sunday activities that helped ground me as I contemplated the potential changes looming in both my professional and personal life. That evening, I received another text message. This one from an unexpected source, my younger brother Tyler. We had never been particularly close. The 7-year age gap and his alignment with our parents and Jackson had created a natural distance, but we maintained cordial if infrequent contact. Heard about last night. His message read. Sounds intense. Just wanted to say I think it's cool what you've accomplished with your work. Never really understood what you did before. It was a small olive branch, but one I appreciated nonetheless. Perhaps the fracturing of the family's carefully maintained facade might allow for new, more authentic connections to form. By Monday morning, I had decided to approach the situation pragmatically. I would meet with Mr. Thompson to learn more about the position, evaluate it on its merits, and make a professional decision based on what was best for my career and the communities I hope to serve. I wouldn't let family complications dictate my choices any more than I already had throughout my life. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly and dramatically my family would react once they recovered from their initial shock. The week that followed would bring Confrontations and revelations that would force all of us to reckon with the dysfunctional patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. Monday morning arrived with a series of missed calls from unknown numbers on my phone. I didn't think much of it until I checked my voicemail and heard my mother's voice, strained but attempting to sound casual. "Beatrice, it's Mom. Call me back when you get a chance. It's important." Another voicemail followed this one from my father: "Beatrice, we need to talk. Call us as soon as possible." I deleted both without returning the calls and focused on my workday. The preliminary quarterly reports for our current projects needed reviewing, and I had a staff meeting at 11:00. Normal life continued despite the family drama that had erupted over the weekend. By Tuesday, the missed calls had multiplied. Both my parents were now calling multiple times daily, leaving increasingly urgent messages. Jackson had joined in as well, his voicemails alternating between two demands to call me immediately and slightly more conciliatory requests to just talk for 5 minutes. I continued to ignore them all. After years of minimal contact initiated almost entirely by me, their sudden desperate need to communicate was transparently self-serving. They weren't concerned about me or our relationship. They were concerned about damage control, as Emma had reported overhearing. Wednesday morning, I received an email from Robert Thompson's assistant confirming an interview for the Director of Community Investment Strategies position on Friday afternoon. I replied, accepting the appointment, still uncertain whether I would actually take the job if offered, but determined to explore the opportunity fully. That same afternoon, a text message arrived from Jackson. "Don't do this, please." The message was so vague, it was almost comical. Don't do what exactly? Don't attend the interview. Don't exist in ways that inconvenience him. Don't expect to be treated like a full member of the family. I left it unanswered. Thursday brought an escalation. I was leaving a meeting with community stakeholders when I spotted my parents waiting beside my car in the parking lot. My first instinct was irritation at the invasion of my workplace, followed quickly by resignation. I should have known they wouldn't simply accept being ignored. "Beatrice," my mother called out as I approached, her tone falsely bright. "We've been trying to reach you." "I've been busy," I replied neutrally, unlocking my car and placing my briefcase inside. "How did you know where to find me?" "Your office website lists your schedule of community meetings," my father explained. "We thought it would be better to talk in person." I sighed, closing the car door without getting in. "Talk about what exactly?" They exchanged glances clearly, having rehearsed this conversation. "We wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding about the party," my mother began carefully. "We should have invited you. That was wrong of us." "Was it a misunderstanding though?" I asked, meeting her gaze directly. "Or was it a deliberate decision to exclude me because I didn't fit the image Jackson wanted to project to his boss?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "It was complicated." Beatrice Jackson felt that mixing family and business could be problematic. "Problematic?" I repeated flatly. Interesting choice of word. "And now that his boss knows I exist and has offered me a job at his company, the situation has become even more problematic, hasn't it?" "That's partly why we wanted to talk to you," my mother admitted, "about this job opportunity." "What about it?" "Well, it's just that Jackson has been working toward this new division for months. It's been his focus, his goal. He's put everything into positioning himself for this role." I laughed incredulously. So, you're here to ask me to decline a job I'm qualified for that I'm interested in because Jackson wants it even though he doesn't have the relevant experience or expertise. We're family, my mother said as if that explained and justified everything. We should be helping each other, not competing. Family, I echoed. That's convenient. I wasn't family enough to invite to a celebration, but I'm family enough to be expected to sacrifice an opportunity for Jackson's benefit. My father stepped forward, his expression hardening slightly. Beatrice, you've always been independent. You've built your own path without our help. Jackson has different needs. Different needs, I repeated, or different value to you. The truth of that statement hit home, and I saw a flicker of something. Guilt. Perhaps, cross both their faces before they recovered their composure. This isn't productive, my mother said, reverting to the tone she used when ending uncomfortable family discussions. We just want what's best for everyone. No, I corrected her quietly. You want what's best for Jackson, as you always have. The difference now is that I'm no longer willing to accept being an afterthought in my own family. I opened my car door again. I have another appointment. I think we're done here. Beatrice, please. My father began, but I cut him off. I have an interview tomorrow. I'm going to attend it and make my decision based on what's right for me and for the communities I serve. Not based on what's convenient for Jackson. You raised me to be independent. Remember, I'm simply living up to your expectations. I got into my car and drove away, watching them growing smaller in my rear view mirror. The conversation had gone exactly as I'd anticipated. No real acknowledgement of the deeper issues, just tactical maneuvering to protect Jackson's interests. Friday morning brought a new approach. Jackson requested to meet for coffee before my interview, suggesting a cafe near Pinnacle's downtown offices. Against my better judgment, I agreed, curious to hear what he would say without our parents present to mediate. The Jackson who greeted me at the cafe looked markedly different from the confident, polished executive I'd seen at the party. He appeared tired with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of sleepless nights. Thanks for meeting me, he said, as I sat down across from him. What's on your mind, Jackson? I asked directly. Not interested in small talk. He stared into his coffee for a long moment before responding. I've been a terrible brother to you. The admission caught me off guard. I had expected more manipulation. Not this apparent contrition. Yes, you have. I agreed simply. He winced but nodded. I deserve that. Look, I could offer a lot of excuses about family dynamics and patterns we fell into as kids, but the truth is simpler and uglier. I've been jealous of you for as long as I can remember. This was not what I had expected to hear. Jealous of what? Of everything that makes you you, he gestured vaguely. Your intelligence. Your independence, your clarity of purpose. You always knew who you were. And what you wanted. I've spent my whole life trying to figure that out, trying to win approval, trying to be enough. I remained silent, processing this revelation. Mom and Dad made it easy to ignore you. To pretend you didn't matter, he continued. They focused so much on me that I could convince myself that was normal, that you were the outlier. But the truth is, I think they focused on me because they knew I needed it more. You were always going to be okay without their constant attention. I wasn't that Doesn't excuse deliberately excluding me from family events I pointed out or pretending I didn't exist when it was convenient for you. No, it doesn't. He agreed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Beatrice. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to understand that it wasn't because you weren't good enough or important enough. It was because you were too good, too important, too successful in ways that made me feel inadequate. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but saw only exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine remorse. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Is it because I might take the job you want? Jackson laughed hollowly. The job I want, but I'm not qualified. 4. That's the most ironic part of all this. I've been positioning myself for a role I don't have the expertise to actually do. Well, you do. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not here to ask you not to take the job. That would be selfish and hypocritical even for me. I'm here because seeing you at that party watching Thompson recognize your achievements made me realize how much damage I've done to you, to our relationship, to myself. What do you mean? I've spent years pretending to be something I'm not. Hiding parts of my family that didn't fit the image I wanted to project. Burning bridges I should have been building. For what a job I'm not even right for. He shook his head. It's pathetic, really. I didn't disagree, but I was still wary of this apparent epiphany. So, what happens now? That's up to you, he said. I'll understand if you never want to speak to me again after your interview today, but if there's any chance of, I don't know, starting over somehow, I'd like to try to be the brother I should have been all along. The sincerity in his voice was compelling, but years of disappointment had taught me to be cautious. Actions speak louder than words, Jackson. 1. Conversation doesn't erase decades of behavior. I know, he nodded. I don't expect it to. I just wanted a chance to tell you the truth before you make your decision about the job. Whatever you decide, I'll support it, and I'll tell Thompson the same when I see him next week. Our conversation ended shortly. After, with no promises made on either side. As I walked the 2 blocks to Pinnacle's headquarters for my interview, I found myself in a strange emotional state, still hurt and angry about the past, but also contemplating possibilities for the future that I hadn't considered before. The interview with Robert Thompson and his executive team went exceptionally well. The role they described was challenging, but aligned perfectly with my experience and vision for community-centered economic development. They were particularly interested in my approach to measuring social impact alongside financial returns, an area where traditional investment banks often struggled. By the time I left the Pinnacle offices that afternoon, I had a formal job offer in hand with a salary nearly double what I was currently making and resources that dwarfed those available at my nonprofit. It was by any objective measure an extraordinary opportunity. As I stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming office tower, I realized I was at a crossroads. The decision I made would affect not just my career trajectory, but also the complex, painful, and possibly evolving relationships with my family. The question was no longer simply whether to take the job, but what kind of future I wanted to build professionally and personally. Did I want to work alongside the brother who had excluded me, but now claimed to seek reconciliation? Could I trust that his apparent epiphany was genuine? And most importantly, what did I want for myself, independent of my family's expectations or my reaction to them? I had spent so many years defining myself in opposition to my family's indifference, that I needed to be certain whatever choice I made now was truly for me, not another reaction to their treatment. As I headed home, I Knew I had important decisions to make about the job offer, about my relationship with Jackson, about the boundaries I would establish with my parents moving forward. But for perhaps the first time, I felt I was approaching these decisions from a position of strength rather than hurt. Whatever I chose, it would be on my terms, not theirs. The journey of healing from family wounds is rarely linear or simple. There are no perfect resolutions, no moments where everything is suddenly made right. There are only small steps toward greater understanding. Boundaries that protect without isolating, and the gradual building of relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I didn't know if reconciliation with my family was possible or even desirable in its traditional sense. But I did know that I no longer needed to be defined by their perception of me or my reaction to it. I had built a life of value and purpose without their support, and that achievement was mine regardless of whether they ever fully recognized it. As I considered the job offer from Pinnacle, I realized that my decision needed to be based on what the role could mean for my work in community development, not on its implications for my relationship with Jackson. If I accepted, it would be because the position allowed me to expand my impact and advance causes I believed in. If I declined, it would be because my current role better served those same goals. Whatever I decided, I would no longer be the forgotten daughter or the excluded sister. I would be Rick Coleman, defined on my own terms, building a future shaped by my choices rather than others' limitations. In the end, isn't that the most important thing any of us can achieve? Not the approval of others, even those who should have loved us unconditionally, but the freedom to live authentically as ourselves, to create meaning and purpose on our own terms, and to find peace in the knowledge that our worth was never dependent on their recognition in the first place. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who consistently undervalued you, or found yourself succeeding in ways they never expected? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their value isn't determined by their family's ability to see it. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and self-discovery. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into.